I'm more concerned about amateurs dealing with half-long balls. Because once you push a half-long ball, you're just adding force into the spin. It's very easy to produce a low-quality push. Normally, when we push, this is the typical effect. But if you can perform a backhand flick, you immediately turn from passive to active. And the backhand banana flick is actually very easy to execute. It's genuinely easier than you think. You'll definitely have much better control over the spin compared to simply pushing the ball. The key point after positioning. For the backhand banana flick stance, your right shoulder should be forward, left shoulder slightly back. That's very different from pushing. When pushing, both shoulders face forward. But for the banana flick, the right shoulder leads. You must drive the shoulder and set the elbow. Otherwise it won't work. Normally this kind of ball is something we would push, because flicking it often leads to errors. Why can't many amateurs flick this ball? Because their hand is positioned in front of the elbow. That only allows a simple lift. If the elbow is in front of the hand, then you can execute a proper banana flick. If it's no spin, you can still flick it. But against backspin, you won't be able to lift it like that. Only when you turn it to this extent can you increase friction and spin. So the elbow must be in front of the racket. That's how you flick. Drive the shoulder forward and raise the elbow. Always keep the racket behind your elbow and your hand. Never let it get in front. First, establish proper preloading for the flick. Many players flick toward themselves or toward the table. But the correct flick technique should move toward your right hip. Look at the starting point of the ball. It should begin here, not here. If you start from here, at contact there's no loading space. But if I start like this for the flick, when I brush the ball during movement, the contact happens naturally along the trajectory. Only under these conditions, you lift heavy spin effectively. Even slight spin can stop your flick, because it's closely related to your loading. The second issue is insufficient inward rotation. This is especially a problem for penhold players. With penhold, the wrist inward rotation feels awkward. You need to rotate to this extent to lift the ball. Only then can you brush it properly. Otherwise you can't generate friction. So you must rotate inward fully. Pay attention to the racket head direction. It must point to 5 o'clock. Your wrist should even feel slightly uncomfortable. When I trained banana flick and reverse spin, I even had to wrist injections. Not sure if it was from flicking or reverse spin. Probably reverse spin. It strains the wrist. So everyone must pay attention. As long as your flick isn't stiff, it won't cause serious injury. Speaking of injuries, many people overtrain. For example, if your elbow already hurts, you can practice forehand loops, pushes, or serves. Don't overload it every day. If you feel soreness, stop immediately and switch techniques. Resume once the pain subsides. Now let me ask you a question. Is it easier to flick the back of the ball, or the side of the ball? Your racket face must angle slightly to the right. That helps create arc. This applies to both shakehand and penhold. When we flick, after inward rotation, the racket face must be slightly angled, not directly facing forward. At this point in the motion, the racket naturally faces sideways, not forward, because of the wrist position. For heavy spin, contact the lower half and brush upward. So the racket face is slightly angled to the right. Yes, it should look like this. If the spin isn't very strong, you can move the contact point slightly higher from the lower half. Brush more toward the middle upper part. If there's slight spin, still contact slightly below center. Flick in this direction. It's easier to execute. If you try to contact the very top against heavy spin, you'll need exceptional touch. So when performing the flick loop, find a slightly side contact point as your reference. It's technically demanding. The third key point is that it's primarily an outward arc motion. Players with weak backhands share one common trait. They always move in a straight line. For example, from low to high, or from back to front. They only move in straight lines. But all strong backhands. Let's start with the flip. Look at the racket head. Now look at the flick motion. Observe the swing trajectory. It's like a fan. The racket head traces along the edge of a fan. It follows this curved path. The banana flick is like this. Open the fan to this extent. For backspin, slightly to the left, open to this degree. If you drive straight here, it's straight line. If you move like this, it's cross court. There's a clear trajectory. Watch the racket head. If you move straight, because it's backspin, you must create arc. I feel my backhand is relatively strong, because I draw this small arc very well. This is extremely important. If your backhand is weak, you must train the racket head to always produce an arc. Even in a flip. Look carefully, the flick also has it just larger. Any shot that requires arc must follow this trajectory. You need this concept. Think of a clock. It's always circular. From here to here when applying force. It can't be straight. It must follow an arc. If the ball goes to 11 o'clock, imagine your racket head starts at 5 o'clock, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9, then 10 and 11. Your loading is at 5 o'clock. From 5 to 11, that's straight. If you rely on the arm, it's too late. It's the racket head reaching 11. If I go to 11, it's straight. If I go to 2, it's cross court. For a flip, I might start at 8 o'clock. From 8 to 1. For a loop, maybe from 7 to 2. You can't go straight from 6 to 12. The forehand also follows a trajectory. For example, forehand loop against backspin, during backswing. The racket may point at 6, but you must reach 5 to contact. After contact, look at the outward arc. Finish at 12 or 1. What's the common amateur problem? On the backswing they pull from 3. Back to 4. Then lift forward and upward. Without that outward arc. Imagine your racket head is the hand of a clock. Start from 6. Contact at 5 and move to 12. Even if you get jammed, it's still not a straightforward back motion. There's always a small outward arc. He can already guarantee the ball lands on the table. If I want to add more power, I simply accelerate the motion, and it will still land. Let me imitate the typical amateur framework. It's only an up and down motion. Or purely sideways. You must clearly understand this trajectory. Then your topspin will become very solid within this proper framework. Gradually increase racket head speed from slow to fast. And when you combine speed with body rotation, it becomes a power loop. Sorry, I broke that ball. Never deform the structure. Always follow this trajectory.